Before we get started, I want to remind you of something you probably already know, but something that really is a big help for us. If you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, you can find out how you can support these shows. It's a place where you can give a certain amount of money per month to support Radio Free Midworld and other Duckfeed TV shows, like Watch Out for Fireballs or Abject Suffering or Days of Future Cast, any of those. Once again, that is patreon.com/DuckFeedTV. Sounds like we're making it up when we say it makes a difference, but it really, truly does. Cool, thanks. Let's talk about this book. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books and its related works. My name is Cole Ross, and today I'm joined by Autumn Greer. Hi, Autumn.
Hi, I'm even more delighted than usual because it's just the two of us.
I know, right? We get to we get to just go back and forth as opposed to having the round table kind of thing, which is nice too.
If you hear a rustling noise, it's because I'm making us a friendship bracelet right now.
Oh, nice! I made us a God's Eye, but that's because I was sick the day at camp. We learned how to make friendship bracelets. Yeah, so this week we are talking about the Stephen King book Desperation, which was written in 1996, or released in 1996 rather, before Wizard and Glass, and also kind of alongside a companion book / alternate universe book called The Regulators by Richard Bachman, which we're going to get to later.
This was an interesting book. My background on this book, I read it when it came out in 1996 because I was a big sucker for anything Stephen King was doing. You know, he had released those little individual Green Mile books as part of a series, and I was ready. Wow, you know, he's doing such an innovative thing. He's releasing Desperation and The Regulators as kind of a set. The covers are going to match up and everything like that. But when I read Desperation at the time in 1996, I did not love it. I was pretty meh on the book when I read it then, but coming back and reading it now, you know, at the time I hadn't read any Dark Tower books. Coming back and reading it now, I kind of have a whole different take on it.
Yeah, it's definitely a really strange book because it covers a lot of the same notes that Stephen King has covered in a lot of his other works. You know, like here we have a town with a terrible secret. We have a force from beyond that is trying to corrupt people. We have a preteen child with a direct line to God.
We have a writer with an addiction problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So like all this stuff makes it seem like it should be, you know, real boilerplate, bog standard Stephen King. In a lot of ways it is. I think what it does, though, is it achieves something like structurally. Like, this is an incredibly focused book for Stephen King.
It really is. You know, I was trying to think in my head how I would describe it top line, and it's a book that I enjoyed very, very much, but I don't know that I would recommend to anybody else necessarily. I can think of a lot of books I would put ahead of it in the Stephen King, I guess, body of works, but I loved this book, but at the same time, I was like, this is not his best.
No,
you know?
No. This is real, I think, yeoman's work. I think it's, it's Stephen King in the mid 90s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is scary, which, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you're looking for. I mean, it's a horror novel, and mission accomplished.
Yeah. You know, for as much as the characters kind of fall flat, the scenarios in this are terrifying. I think this has one of the strongest openings in one of Stephen King's books that I've read.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. That's my very first note, because they set you off in the first few pages. I mean, you start off, you've already got a dead cat nailed to a sign. They mention Satanists, and there's literally no one around. I mean, they just turned the creepy up to 11 and ripped the knob off, you know?
Yeah, you're on the loneliest highway, and you are pulled over by a monster cop. What do you do?
Yeah, that's one thing that we'll notice all throughout the book is, you know, I'm kind of a doobie, I guess. I mean, I'm like, oh no, an authority figure. I have to do exactly what they say. Yeah. Like, I don't think I would be one of those people at McDonald's that, like, the phone call comes in and they talk you into taking your clothes off or anything. But it's pretty much close to that level of how compliant I am with with police officers and everything like that. I'm like, whatever, okay, man, just be cool.
Yeah. Like, I grew up in a law enforcement family, and I'm still just terrified. Like, I got pulled over for a speeding ticket the last year, and it was the scariest thing that happened that year. I had nothing to be afraid of. I was going fast. Yeah, I admitted to it. I had my hands, up on the wheel, all of that, but like still, it just chill up my spine.
Yeah.
So,
and not even terrifying like it is to be for these poor people in Nevada.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So this story takes place around a small Nevada mining town called Desperation, where some evil forces kind of rampaged around and killed all of the inhabitants. Did you notice any similarities to it in this?
I think absolutely. I mean, you're talking about kind of an unseen force that's manipulating town. It's corrupted an entire town. It was using adults to manipulate people for its own ends. And in this, I guess the child is the one character that isn't able to be manipulated by it, but absolutely, it's a menacing, unseen force with an evil will that's. Mm-hmm. It is messing this mining town up.
By which we mean erasing it from the map. Yeah. So I should also note, just while we're talking about the biographics here, did you watch the made-for-TV movie version of this?
It was very important to me to show up prepared. So actually, night before last, I went ahead and watched the movie, which beat for beat was almost verbatim the book.
Yes.
I mean, there were some small changes, but
yeah, I mean, so stuff to make it more filmable. I didn't so much care for it. It just suffered from being a TV movie. I think I ended up liking the cast an awful lot. So like Ron Perlman, so they got Ron Perlman to play Monster Cop, to play Collie Entragian, and that was an inspired choice.
Perfect casting.
Just because like his grill's kind of fucked up anyway. But B, and not just, he has a unique countenance, let's say, right? He's a big guy, and he does really good when he hams it up, right?
Speaking of hamming up, and of course we're not to this in our discussion of the book, but there's a scene in the movie where David's young friend is thrown up against that wall. Holy moly, that kid splats in the movie.
I lost my shit when that happened. That was so funny.
I mean, it was literally like a mannequin with a water balloon full of red paint for a head when he hit that wall.
Yeah, well, he hits the wall. He's obviously launched from some kind of trebuchet, and instead of like leaving like a trail of blood or whatever, there appears to be some kind of like big red mass that is left behind where his face hit.
I'm like, my little man's not walking away from this. Yeah. Very believable.
Yeah, so you can rent that on I guess I rented it on iTunes. It was like $3. I didn't finish it, but I did watch the opening third, which I think is the strongest part of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why are we talking about this on a Dark Tower show? There are so many Stephen King books. How does this one rate? So kind of the main antagonist of this is a demon called Tack. Like we said, he sleeps deep beneath the earth. He's awakened when the gate to his world is dug up. And he's kind of similar to like Pennywise or Rosematter or any other of these kind of like Chodash creatures from the spaces beyond or between, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to kind of underline that connection, he uses the language of the unformed, the language of the dead, these kind of guttural, monosyllabic kind of just barks. So Kandalak mihimentau, just rattling that stuff off. And that's used a lot later in the book. It's kind of the unified language of the lower forces.
It's interesting, and it's effective seeing the language throughout and everything. And there's some terms and things, sarx, pneuma, that it's been a minute since I've read books 6 and 7 of the Dark Tower series, but I feel like those are used frequently.
Yeah, that stuff is rolled out kind of at a rapid fire clip. Same thing with Canta and Cantoi. Those are used differently here. So the Canta in this are these kind of powerful statues that can influence or hijack a person's mind just by having them look at it or by having them hold it or touch it. This features later in the series, and I should probably say putting this book here is a bit of a whoopsie because it doesn't really relate to Wizard and Glass or directly to the Wind Through the Keyhole. I just needed something to put in this place, and I wanted to talk about this book. But remember the Canta.
Basically, just like any Funko Pop figurine, right?
Right. Did you see that? I mean, this will date the recording. Did you see that contract that was drawn up?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So otherwise, like that would have just been a fun joke about Funko Pops. But in the light of that contract, I get a chill up my spine. The second time I've said chill up my spine.
I would consider making Jeremy sign some kind of contract, but all the Dark Souls stuff that he gets is dope. So what can I do? Like, contract, buy more.
Yeah, contract. This is sweet. Sign if both parties agree. Yes.
I'm ready for him to get one of those like sweet $500 3.5 foot statues. I'm like, buy it. He's like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, no, it's not.
I want those bookends.
You got a passion.
They put out that massive collector's edition, or they announced that massive collector's edition in Japan that has these sweet Dark Souls bookends in it, and I collect bookends. Normally, I like to get them from thrift stores, but it's real tempting, despite the fact that the whole box is like $500.
You know, when about probably like 20 people right now are writing this down just in case they get you for Secret Santa next year, right?
Yeah, hit me up. I love bookends. The other term, kind of in this low language that we need to know, is Cantoi. That is CAN-TOI, not toy like a Funko Pop. But in this book, that's kind of the reference. It's the catch-all name for all of these low animals that do tax bidding. They're expanded and kind of become these sentient beings with animal heads in the series proper. And they also intersect with the low men and yellow coats, which become a major figure post 2000 in the series. But here, just understand, like, he is playing around with these terms, introducing them and kind of refining what they mean.
I love picturing in my head anyone that hasn't finished the series right now that might be listening. Because, I mean, we just finished up with the Emerald City and Magic Red Shoes. Yeah. And, now we're kind of letting people know that there's going to be low men in yellow coats and animal-headed humanoids that serve the Crimson King.
Yeah. No,
you're like, so what now?
We are on a road to some strange country in this series. So we just have a couple more connections here. We have Cynthia Smith is back. She was kind of a minor character in Rose Matter. She was the girl with the punk hair who was at Daughters and Sisters, the place where, oh my gosh, what's the main character's name? Shit, it's not Rose. Rose is different. Fuck. The shelter where the main character goes. I really should have looked that up.
Sisters, daughters and sisters? No.
Yeah, Daughters and Sisters. I forget the name of the main character, the wife in Rose Matter.
Oh, Rose Daniels.
Okay. Yes. There we go. Yeah. And there's another. So Cynthia is on loan from that story about a crazy cop and into this story about a crazy cop. So she cannot catch a break.
Oh man, I hadn't actually made that connection. I knew that she had some obviously rough times, but for some reason I had forgotten about Norman being a cop. Yeah, man, she's having a bad little run here. Yeah.
I think she should. I was about to say what country has no cops, but all I could think of was Somalia.
Oh, geez.
Which is not good. I was just trying to think where could she go, but no, law enforcement is inescapable. This story takes place near the Desatoya Mountains, which are the Earth version of the mountains where the Little Sisters of Illyria takes place. A little bit of a fun fact there. And also, and I want to kind of test to see if I'm way off base here. This book, so Desperation's relationship with the regulators, right? You know, 2 books came out around the same time, feature characters of the same name, but they're shifted around. It's a different story. And it was written by Richard Bachman as opposed to Stephen King. Knowing where the metatextual stuff is going to go later on, this seems like Richard Bachman is a different... Okay, I understand. This makes me sound crazy because I understand the difference between fiction and real life. But like, this is setting up this kind of thing where Richard Bachman is a writer on a different level of the tower, discovering and telling the same story that Stephen King is on ours.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. That's one thing that a lot of stuff that I highlighted throughout the book, it seems to hit a lot of beats. I mean, they even mention the Tommyknockers at one point, but you see somebody being so focused on something that they fall into decrepitude and their body just gets destroyed. I mean, it just hits a lot of beats and touches from all of his books, which I think kind of ties in with some of the stuff that we'll see in the later books as well, about the whole Stephen King universe.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it's a strange little marketing play that he did to sell 2 books about the same characters at the same time. Yeah. So any other notes or comments about these tower connections? Maybe things I didn't see?
No. Like I said, I've got some little notes throughout of certain turns of phrase and things like that. But no, I think we should get into it.
Yeah, let's do it by jumping in with part 1. It takes place on Highway 50 in the House of the Wolf and the House of the Scorpion. Or as I have it written in the notes here, Scorian. The opening of this, like I said, is incredibly effective because it's like a regular everyday occurrence that would make you nervous, right? Traffic stop, nobody likes this, right? We have Mary and Peter Jackson, married couple, East Coast kind of academics driving through Nevada, just noticing this cat nailed up on a sign and talking about like, oh, people live here because they're intense, right?
I haven't spent a lot of time in Nevada, but is anyone really that intense?
I don't know.
I mean, dead cat intense? Like, I mean, in Louisiana, we have a lot of shot up stop signs and like graffiti on stop signs, but no cats, knock on wood.
I mean, maybe they're on the other side. There's a little bit of that kind of Southern gentleman kind of thing where they don't put the cats on the front of the sign, they put it on the back. They're still there. You just can't see them.
But everything's kind of weird about this traffic stop start to finish. The guy doesn't pull them over in the normal way. He kind of speeds up, passes them, stops, pulls over to the side of the road, and then finally stops them. I mean, it just right away you can tell there's something weird happening. Yeah, it's like you see he even with his car is like trying to intimidate them. Like in the TV movie, he straight up does a brake check on them. Yeah. And they pull him over and they're it's like, okay, what's going on? We were probably speeding. They've got a quota. He gets out and he's this massive policeman. Like they think like 6'7", over 300 pounds, just like this wall of a man. Who comes up and just kind of starts giving them shit. Yeah. Like real low grade at first. Like Peter pulls out his driver's license, hands it over. And he's like, "Oh, you're an organ donor. Do you think that's wise?" Which is just an odd question for anyone to like, especially a police officer to ask you. Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to debate the ethics of this right here? Okay. But the reason that this massive police officer pulled them over is they're missing their license plate. Like somebody back in a town they stopped in, there's a bunch of kids just kind of took it off and hung it up in their clubhouse. Yeah. There's a really lovely line that Stephen King wrote about the cop like pulling the screw off from what was left, was left over from their license plate, and he kind of tosses it over to the side in the desert. And I think I wrote it down where it would lie where it would lie undisturbed for 1,000,000 years unless it caught some inquisitive bird's eye. Like, I could just picture Roland stepping on this. Being like, man, first I lost my fingers with the lobstrosities. Now I stepped on this stupid ass screw. Come on.
Yep. I'm going to get tetanus now, or it's midworld, so I'm going to get hyper tetanus now.
I'm sure they'd have some fancy Gilead name for it, like old man split jaw or something like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Oh, I would get Rudy Tooty Jaw. Yeah. I don't know. But yes, if Roland didn't step on that, he would definitely stop and line it up so it would perfectly go with the path of the beam. So they're digging around for a toolkit, and the reason that this couple is driving this car, they're trying to get it's Peter's sister who moved across country, and like, hey, we'll drive your car across country for you. What seems like a real big solid, But
Yeah.
Turns out the sister's a burnout, and what do they find in the spare tire? But boy, oh boy, just a comically large bag of marijuana.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it has a smiley face sticker on it, which kind of puts me in the mind of, doesn't Randall Flagg's jean jacket have a smiley face pin?
Oh yeah, that's how he signs all of his notes too.
And
RF smiley face.
Yeah, and then it came up in Mr. Mercedes too, right? Don't they have like a little riff on a smiley face in that book?
I have neither read nor watched Mr. Mercedes.
I like the formal way you said that. Like, how dare you mention that on this podcast? It is out of universe,
Yep.
Mrs. Greer.
No. I hope I didn't sound offended. No.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So this flips a switch, and he starts berating them, and we get that oh so lovely Stephen King trope of, we know this person is a villain because he immediately becomes the most bigoted character imaginable. Saying anti-Semitic, homophobic stuff. It's real rough.
Yeah, like a really rough version of coastal liberal elites, right?
Yeah. And he loads them into the car, and when he's Mirandizing them, he's like, oh, you have the right to remain silent, you can have an attorney, anything that you say can be held against you. I'm going to kill you if you can't. Wait a minute, what? Oh, he slips I'm going to kill you into the Miranda.
Yeah, like you do.
Oh, no.
There's one line in there when the wife is thinking to her, or I think she says out loud to her husband that half of his sister's brain cells are fried and the other half are on permanent vacation in the Emerald City.
Oh yeah. Huh.
Which is a nice little tie-in.
Yeah, I didn't notice that parallel. Oh, he must have been working on these at about roughly the same time, right?
I guess that is possible. He probably was. I can't remember what year Wizard and Glass came out.
97, so 1 year later than this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, he was on his game.
Yeah, he had Oz on the mind. As he drags these poor, seemingly nice people into town past this deserted RV with 4 flat tires and the door flapping open. It's no good.
And this is kind of everyone's worst fear too. Like I rent a lot of cars for work, and I've always been nervous that, like, you get pulled over in a car that isn't yours, and I don't know, they bring the drug dogs out, and it turns out somebody left drugs in a side panel or something like that, and you're like, it's just a rental, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I definitely didn't take that in the wheel well. What's weird, I didn't even look there. Oh, shit. Yeah. But just like even being at the whim of somebody in authority, and I really sympathize with Peter's reaction here, which is to just babble on and on, saying, "Oh, she went to Reed College, but she hated it because it was like a Grateful Dead concert." But like telling his entire life story to this psycho.
And I do that too. Like, I'm like, I'll seem really credible if I just talk more.
Oh, if I just give more details, there's no chance I could mess this up.
Exactly. They'll know I'm not a criminal because I'm so chatty.
Yeah. Also, here's a pro tip: never ask a state trooper what seems to be the problem. not a good thing to do. That's not from this book. That's just from real life. So, but when he gets them to the police station, he decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to plug Peter in the stomach a bunch of times with some bullets. Just pow, 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 because he struggled.
This is kind of a baller author move right here, because, I mean, Peter has been our only point of view character. All of our experiences for the first 40 and 50 pages of the book are through Peter's eyes, and then he's like, okay, I'm just going to ice this character that you've been in the mind of for the whole book so far. Yep. There you go.
Not only that, we're going to, kick this person who felt like a secondary character in this into a situation like where she's the newcomer. She's the outsider because, they pass over this body of a dead little girl. We're going to find her family here in just a minute. But Mary's the only one who's left. She has lost her Peter and never had her Paul. Which Collie is definitely, he makes that joke. He's funny about it. But no, we're immediately put into this chaotic scene with 5 different characters we need to get acquainted with.
And it just takes it from it just ramps the tension up, because now anything can happen. Before, you're like, how are they going to get out of this charge for possession with intent to sell? And oh no, shit just got real.
Yep. One of them is dead, and any of the others could die. Additionally, yeah. Peter Jackson, the character who just got shot, could have served as the Stephen King protagonist, kind of regular guy, right? Oh, he's an English teacher. He's a little bit burnt out, a little bit skeptical, blah, blah, blah. We don't know that in 20 pages we're going to meet an even better example of kind of the self-insert here. But just to have that moment where that keystone is kind of yanked away does put you on edge, right?
So we had a Barry Sue before we got to our Gary Sue, right?
Absolutely. The older, wiser, recovering addict version of that. So in the jail, there's this scuffle as everybody's saying, hey, grab that shotgun, shoot him. Before the police officer just kind of beats her and puts her in a cell. And we're introduced to most of the rest of our cast. We have the Carvers, and we also have the local vet / town drunk kind of guy, whose name is Tom Billingsley. He's the guy who watched this police officer, Collie Entragian, massacre the whole town.
One thing that's kind of nice about the book is there's all these just very 1996 references. Like somebody says that, or there's a sign up that says that someone is a Snapple drinking son of a bitch. And I mean, how hot was Snapple in the 90s? And Jolt Cola later in the book. And I think there's a line where the kid David says, or the dad says, maybe he's just a postal worker having a bad day. And I'm like, wow, that was a time and place where all those postal shootings.
Yeah. So Summer Sam kind of stuff. Yeah. There is, so in retrospect, an embarrassing amount of ink spilled describing the function of a mobile phone, a mobile phone speed dial, and also what happens when phones had a bad connection around the time.
Yeah, I'm surprised they're not carrying a little bag around, that's their cell phone.
Yeah. But yeah, our writer character who we're going to meet shortly, he's got a little star tack, Yeah. Not a star tack, like the bad guy of this, but the
Yeah, I'm actually starting to get nervous. If you're going to start just throwing in tack, we're in a real situation.
Yes. Also, Collie Entragian, the monster cop, he just throws in, he just can't control saying the word tack at the end of certain sentences, putting people off guard. So let's talk about the Carvers here, because all of them feature in, except for the dad. Like Ralph is basically Ralph's story is he's bald, he's a little overweight. He's a Columbus, Ohio guy, and then he dies.
Yeah,
but he's played by Matt Frewer in the TV movie version.
He seemed a little old to be his dad.
A little bit, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
I wonder if it's a remarriage.
Oh, definitely. He definitely. This is take 2. He's a scratch and dent husband.
He's got an older daughter from his first marriage at Vassar right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. So he sends her what he can, but
He's got his new family.
Yep. And never the two Christmases shall meet. We have Ellen, who is her kind of defining character trait is worried mom, but also mom who is very kind of confused and a little bit upset that her son David is kind of found this newly religious streak, right?
Yeah.
Oh, also, I'm giving them a hard time. Their daughter just got killed by being pushed down a flight of stairs.
That's fair. It is easy to overlook that because, again, you're so stunned that somebody's been shot. You're like, wait, now there's a dead girl? What is happening?
Yeah. Nope. Here's a complaint about the novel. At no point does somebody dying seem to really affect the people who are close to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, David gets a little bit of like, oh gosh, everybody's gone, and he definitely misses his little sister because, spoiler, David ends up being the only person from his family to walk away. But everybody else just kind of, well, I guess they're dead. We just need to survive.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. We just got to get through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But David is the Stephen King, let's say, character number 012, the branded blessed little boy.
And how?
Yeah. Or as they as Entragian calls him, that fucking little prayer boy. Or pray boy. Calls him pray boy. Yeah. And like we said, Tom Billingsley is this veterinarian, kind of the historian of the group, telling them this stuff. So they all end up getting locked up. It's bad, and we cut to Stephen King stand-in number 2, Johnny Marinville.
Johnny's great. Johnny, right from the beginning, can't stop telling you that he slept with a famous actress, and he's a National Book Award winner. Like, he just, every other sense of his mouth, he's like, hi, I'm Johnny. I slept with a famous actress, and I'm dying to know who it is. He mentions emeralds. I mean, it can't be Elizabeth Taylor. I don't know who the actress is if I'm supposed to know the actress.
I think that in universe, it's supposed to be his wife, the one who kind of torments him in visions.
Oh, I don't think because she's the book critic. I think he just mentions that he banged a famous actress.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I forgot about that detail. I thought they were one and the same. I don't know. Johnny is very full of himself. Probably has some reason to be. He frequently says like, "Oh, I'm the," in his inner monologue. He very rarely says it to other people, but like, "Oh, I was called the heir apparent to John Steinbeck." Like, and also revealing a little bit more about the time, saying like, oh, Harper's Magazine or whatever said I'm the only white male author worth paying attention to, or something like that. It's real. So if you are reading these and doing some armchair psychology on Stephen King, you could be tempted to say like, oh, this is super gross. This is who he thinks he is. No, that's not the case. Because the only positive thing that is ever said or thought about Johnny is said or thought by Johnny.
Yeah.
Because even though he has all this achievement, he is this recovering addict. He's a burnout. He's kind of washed up. He's riding across the United States, gathering notes to put together for a series of essays, some of them reprinted from his younger days, called like Traveling with Harley or something like that.
Yeah.
It's real dumb.
There's a line in there where Stephen King says that once you've been accepted as a bona fide literary lion, somebody will keep publishing your crap even after it's turned into parody or outright drivel. And I was like, wow. Whoa.
Hey, Steve.
Too real, man.
Hey, Steve, what are you saying about yourself, buddy?
Yeah, like everybody's got that one friend who's so self-deprecating. And I mean, we've all been that person at some point in our youth or whatever, but that it makes everybody else a little uncomfortable. Like Steve, whoa, walk it back. You're pretty good.
For sure. Like self-deprecation. This isn't an original thought. I forget who I'm stealing this from, but like that only works when people don't think you believe it. Yeah. So, but Johnny is not meant to be a sympathetic character until the very end of the book. When, he has his epiphany and he, comes to God quite literally. But yeah, he's in recovery for addiction, and he's running across America. But he has a babysitter to help him do these speaking gigs, but also to keep him out of trouble. Who's kind of following behind him by about 50 miles.
Which is just the weirdest scenario ever. Like, I can't imagine the publisher being like, okay, you're going to write this book about driving across the desert, but we're going to have a guy follow you. I mean, it's just the fakest thing imaginable.
We're just going to have him scrape, just in case we need somebody to scrape you off the ground.
I mean, the guy's driving a U-Haul in case it rains and he needs to put the bike in the back.
It's so inauthentic. It's like those hunting retreats where it's just a quail inside a cage. And like rich dudes pay to walk up and shoot it in the cage or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. A $20,000 buck tied to a tree.
Yep. It's everything about it is pretty funny, up to and including Johnny's own kind of like, self-opinion, but also self-loathing. He's also suffering from some pretty nasty PTSD because he kind of cut his teeth by being a correspondent in Vietnam. And that comes up later on. But he's rocking a piss on the side of the road. And Entragian, stops and issues him a warning for public urination and parking on a state highway.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and surprise, surprise, as it progresses along, you're not going to believe this, Cole, but it turns out that Johnny also has a bag of marijuana with the same smiley face sticker in the kit bag on his bike, huh? What a coincidence!
There's a great line about that later on when they're comparing their stories. Johnny can't help but laugh, when everybody else is being real serious. Like, hey, he may be a monster, like he may be a literal monster, but at least he recycles. What did you think of Collie's whole like, oh, I'm such a big fan routine?
That was wild because I mean the guy has obviously actually read Johnny's books.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like of all the people to pull you over, a crazy cop possessed by an unnatural force who happens to have read your catalog of work.
Yep. I mean, so it has to be, Collie's obviously possessed by something. Collie might have actually like literally have read this work, and Tack, the being that is kind of possessing him, has to be, like pulling on that and then like, hey, this is the best way to fuck with him is to flatter him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he twists on him, though, I love how Johnny thinks of himself in his head because he has this mental image of the cop burying him in the desert. And I think the actual line is, while in the shade of his cruiser lay the body of a man who had once won the National Book Award and fucked America's most famous actress. Whoa.
You think that's going to be the obituary, huh?
Yeah, that's not how I think of myself when I have like a mental picture of myself done. I like Autumn. She was on several episodes of Radio Free Midworld that, I mean, they were bangers. like.
Yeah, it's you would think the summing up would come to a different different product than that. Yeah. It's very, very funny. But yeah, when Collie finds the weed, he immediately flips and starts doing all kinds of scare tactics on him. At one point, he drops his trowel and shows Johnny his blood leaking penis. Says like, "Hey, suck it." And Johnny's like, "Well, I've seen worse, so whatever." Doesn't go through with it because, that wasn't the point. The point was to make him beg for his life. Instead, Entragian breaks Johnny's nose and then summons a buzzard to attack him before throwing him in the old cruiser.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's a cool little Dracula line in there when he's kind of calling the animals, like when he's like talking about his children at the desert, the Kentoi, what music they make. Like it's just I mean, just what beautiful music.
Yeah. There's a cool scene in the TV movie where they're driving into town, and you get kind of the lay of the land, but also you see the entire road is lined with dogs and coyotes, just kind of like sitting still like good boys, watching them pass. Like they're standing guard at the side of the road. It's real otherworldly.
I think this is probably like one of the few movies that's just full of like dogs and animals and everything where I'm just like, oh, this is not good. I don't like these.
No. I mean, first off, bad on this elemental otherworldly force for putting doggos in danger. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Even coyotes,
I was fine with them killing an entire town of miners, but don't mess with dogs, man.
One dog versus 199 miners.
Hang whatever human you want up on a hook, but that cougar was just trying to have a nice day.
Yep. Well, that cougar is so sympathetic because you get his you get her inner monologue, right? Like, oh, yeah. I need this sleep to be perfect because the person telling me to do this won't settle for anything less than perfection. I'm like, oh man, don't make a cougar all of a sudden start having like performance anxiety.
That thing about a monkey, but we gave it anxiety. Like, ruined a perfectly good monkey. Like, we had a good cougar, now we gave it anxiety about its job,
which is literally only to jump and roar.
Yeah, like we've taken a beautiful like predator and said, hey, I need you to make a PowerPoint to present to your like our whole corporate office, like, and you have one day.
Too much. I mean, first off, how's he going to tie that tie? So Marinville's able to fire off one short staticky phone call from the back of the cruiser to his spotter, the person with the rider truck, Steve Ames, who in the book is kind of a Texas good old boy. In the TV movie is definitely played by what's his name from Wings. By Steven Weber.
Yeah, Steven Weber is well employed in the Stephen King universe because he was in The Shining as well, right? The remake.
Yeah. He was also in an adaptation of one of those Full Dark No Stars stories.
Oh, he's making those King bucks.
Yep. Which can only be spent on the set of Stephen King movies.
He probably has a van with the license plate that says Stephen King paid for this van. Right?
There's some kind of inappropriate irony in that. I don't know, anything with Stephen King and vans.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. I was thinking of Achewood, but yeah, no, you're right. Stephen King was hit by a van.
Oh, I totally missed the Achewood ref. Yeah.
I was thinking of Todd's van.
Wait, do you think Todd can read? I need to actually dig that up and put that in the show notes because it's way too good not to.
But the cop is just getting grosser and grosser. Like at one point he sneezes and sprays whatever all over the windshield, just bits of tissue and blood. But my favorite is he says, gosh, there's nothing worse than a summer cold, is there? Right after he does that. Mm-hmm. But that's exactly what Joe Bob said at Hap Station in The Stand.
Oh, geez.
Like right after he sneezes for the first time, he's like, whew, nothing worse than a summer cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Which A is a thing people say, but B has very scary connotations in that context.
This is just like a grab bag of Stephen King references, like they had a intelligent computer compile his works and
this is like
pull just enough lines to creep me out,
like a deep dream kind of a Markov chain that was fed Stephen King's entire bibliography. Yeah, so like that whole thing though, where Collie just straight up sneezes out what seems to be parts of lung and also his sinus meat. And then just turns and laughs at him like, ha ha ha! Don't that just beat all? nothing adds up about this guy. He doesn't react to anything appropriately.
I do like, though, because we had touched on it when he was kind of ragging on Johnny. But I think he says, "You've never written a truly spiritual novel?" Because at first he's like, likes the books, but then he just starts trashing the guy's body of work. But yeah, it's your great failing.
Yeah. If I can give you some constructive advice.
Yeah. Hey, you mock the God who created you. You waste your sarks, bro.
And I'm going to take your Soma and I'll Sirenuma. And this introduces us to, I think, our final two major characters. So one comes in later. But Steve the Roadie, played by Jimmy Wings, Steven Weber. And also Cynthia. He's picked Cynthia up at the side of the road. And they're kind of immediately like, oh, they gonna fuck. They definitely are hitting it off. So, it's cool. Like, the sad thing is they don't really do an awful lot. They just kind of exist as another set of eyes to show a different part of the story, or to be a set of hands whenever somebody needs to be saved.
I need a truck later in the book. How can I get the truck there?
Let's keep the driver. It's fine.
Well, I don't want him to be alone. I'll just get that lady from Rose Matter. My other book.
She's a transient, yeah. Oh, man. So they're on the case, and they're going into desperation as well. Meanwhile, at the jail, Johnny introduces himself. They all compare notes about their encounters. That's where they discover that Entragian's a recycler. But also, like, hey, something's really wrong with him, because not only is he obviously bleeding internally, leaking blood out of his penis, and also sneezing up bits of organ matter, but his skin is rupturing and he seems to be getting bigger. Like, he wasn't always as giant as he is.
Yeah.
And then this first part ends with Entragian coming back, leading Ellen, David's mom, away from the others, and leaving a Coyote to guard the cells.
This is really scary.
Taking us to part 2, Desperation. In these silences, something may arise.
One thing that's... I know Stephen King has talked about God more. I don't recall him talking quite so much about the Christian God like he does in this book. I mean, obviously, it was a big thing with Mother Abigail and everything, but this is, I don't know, it's like this is like Stephen King's religious novel.
Yeah, so like, the Stand is really, 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 really religious. The Green Mile is explicitly so as well.
Yeah.
I forget the character's name, but acting as a very Jesus-like figure. Like, King very much leans into this idea of Judeo-Christian kind of, like, the power of the supernatural in that dogma, even though he himself, I mean, just if you read his writing about this, is not an especially religious person. And whenever he depicts God outside of the people who kind of speak for him, who follow some of the more like standard tropes, like, oh, this is Father Callahan, the God that they're channeling or the God that they are interpreting is almost always something not more malevolent, but more complicated than like what you might have learned about in church, right? It ends up being this font for power that ends up exacting some kind of cost from you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And this one, more, gosh, I guess I can't say more so than usual, but whew, God is pretty cruel in this for sure.
I mean, that's a refrain. Like, yeah, God is cruel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that leads up to an amazing, like, the only excerpt that I took from the book to read on the show is an amazing quote that is related to that, right? Just about the cost that is kind of pulled from you. But yeah, David is in full on like prophet mode at this point.
He starts right off like in his little point of view chapter when we're getting to know his background, just talking to God.
Yeah, like, not just talking about, like, getting crystal clear missives from him.
Yeah, like he's got a little God radio in that little mind of his.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so David wasn't always religious. His family is not especially religious. However, he kind of had this conversion when apparently the power of prayer saved his best friend, who was hit by a drunk driver. Nobody thought he could live, but, after kind of this close encounter of the god kind, he pulled this miraculous recovery. And this is the part where in the movie, the kid is thrown again by a trebuchet into a wall.
I don't mean to laugh. I mean, that's a horrible thing, but whew, that was some kind of special effect.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have never witnessed something like that. If it is indeed the case that somebody goes, like a kid on his bike that was hit by a car would go flying at that kind of arc, then obviously that's horrifying. In the movie, my first reaction is that is a fucking Looney Tunes stunt.
Yep, somebody purchased the Acme trebuchet. Set it up, put some bird seed in front of it.
Yeah. So David seals this covenant with a little kind of "you're excused" note from school up at his old secret hideaway, his version of the Barrens, this kind of treehouse called the Viet Cong Lookout. Puts the note on a nail and seals the pact, and then starts studying with this pastor, who ends up. There's a little bit of sturm and drang about like, hey, is this guy on the up and up? But it doesn't really add up to much.
Yeah, we just had another drinking priest, like we've seen in other books, like Salem's Lot.
Oh, for sure. And we're gonna see in Wolves of the Kala. Yeah.
Yep.
So David decides to make his great escape while Johnny is keeping the coyote busy with his leather jacket, which I guess to a coyote must just be wearable jerky. I don't know. I have no idea what leather actually is. It's skin, right?
It is. Or maybe the coyote just wanted to go out and look really metal in front of his friend.
Oh, he wanted to impress the people down at the bus stop.
Yeah,
Shit.
He wanted to know that he's in upper management amongst the Cantoy.
You know who wore this jacket? A motherfucking book prize winner.
Yeah, a National Book Award winner who once fucked the most famous actress in America's Sweetheart.
Sorry, I didn't realize that. It's a National Book Award, not American Book Prize. Different things. It's the Pepsi to the Pepsi to Coke. But David's big plan is to grab some soap and lather up. He strips down and rubs the soap all over him, getting nice and slippery, and squeezes out of the bars. He shouldn't have been able to do this because of his head, but somehow this is magical soap that has allowed his bones to compress. It is the first of many what Johnny calls unintrusive miracles. It's the first of many of those kind of miracles that David performs.
Yeah, I guess that jail just was not set up for arresting 11-year-old boys.
Especially not slippery ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the rest of the book, he's covered with dried soap, which just makes me itch all over.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know he's got bigger problems, but dude.
like pulling his little sister off of a hook.
Yeah.
I mean, among them, he gives his little sister a proper burial. Rolls her up in a curtain, kind of like Fran did in The Stand.
There was one other line in this section. I think it maybe was right before the cop left or something, but he says, "You killed my sister, so don't ask stupid questions," which is just straight out of The Dark Tower.
Oh yeah.
Like if it's talking about Blaine.
I will not play silly games, Collie. But there's a kind of badass scene where David busts in and shoots the coyote, frees the others, and ends up at God's command taking a shotgun shell. Forget about Chekhov's gun. This is Chekhov's shell. If a bullet is not fired in Act 2, then it will definitely go off in Act 4.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So they arm themselves, and at the behest of Billingsley, they say, "Hey, let's go to this abandoned theater. I know for sure that it's going to be a safe place to be." Johnny's real salty because he got a gun that didn't have any bullets. And so he says, "You know what? I figure, Billingsley, you're an alcoholic. Why don't I give you some whiskey? Which seems real spiteful to me, actually.
It really does. Like, I wouldn't like take the town drunk and be like, you know what I'm going to do in this life or death crisis situation is I'm going to slip this dude a flask.
Oh yeah, it's fine. Let's just loosen up a little bit. But while they were in the prison, a freak sandstorm whipped up. Nobody foresaw this, and this kind of, when I read it, drew to mind the movie The Thing a little bit, which is just in a lot of ways a story about paranoia, and you get a little bit of that with, oh, who is Tack-In now? But just the desert in the middle of this incredibly hostile weather pattern, just get the skin whipped off if you can't see anything, you choke to death when the sand's out there. And he could literally be this, monster cop could literally just be rolling around in his cruiser at any moment.
I think right after this is when Steve and Cynthia find the motorcycle. They did get the voicemail, the message, or he did hear Johnny's like little scraps of it, that he was up past the RV, got just enough to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which leads them not just into desperation, but to the most upsetting architectural piece of all, the Quonset hut.
There's nothing good in that hut, Cole. Stay out of the hut.
Oh, please. And I was trying to think up any kind of Pizza Hut slogan, but I could not. But yeah, they stop by the Desperation Mining Company and find more bodies on hooks. Just, hung up by their heads, through their jaws and such.
Like you do. Just keep tidy.
It's efficient, you want to keep stuff off the floor. This is a little bit before the Roomba comes out, but he's just getting ready, just getting ready. You don't want to have those bodies down there for that little guy to get tripped up on.
Exactly. It'll make that sad boo boo noise, right?
Yep. I'm trapped under a torso. Help.
It's exactly what happens with my bookcase all the time.
Oh yeah, my entertainment center. No matter what I do.
And that's cleaning tips with Cole and Autumn.
Have a robot do it. So, inside this hut, obviously a massacre has happened here, just like, it has across the entire town. Like, this guy and his animal friends has killed an entire town worth of people. It should, never let it go unremarked upon. They also find this rough statue of a coyote that has kind of this glam or fascination to them, right? When they touch it, it gives them thoughts, specifically sexual thoughts related to some really, let's say, experimental and violent kind of things. Yeah. And they know right away that this thing is bad news and we need to get as far away from it as possible.
I thought that this part was really well written. I thought this scene really worked. It was pretty evocative.
Yeah. Well, just like with Steve, who obviously has feelings for Cynthia, like, you can tell that it's really confusing, because it's like, okay, how much of my attraction is from me because of, the two of us getting along here, and how much of it is from this accursed rock.
Yeah. I think the line that I liked in there was that it was as if sex and murder had somehow changed places in this horrible little town.
Yeah. It's unsettling. So they get a call to say, like, hey, come to the theater. They have a couple of like little misadventures we should talk about, but like, apparently Cynthia is afraid of anything with any number of legs. Anywhere from 0 to 8, because not only is she terrified of the house they walk in that has all that snake bit family in it, but when they're overrun by a literal wave of scorpions, she's like, oh no, not scorpions, oh, not spiders, oh, they're brown recluses, no. There
was one little moment in there where Steve was talking about how he had seen a lot of brown recluse spiders in Texas. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned it was in Arnett, Texas, which is where Stu Redman's from.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Arnett and Hemingford Home are like two mainstays.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I was reading I want to watch 1922 because somebody recommended that to me. That takes place in Hemingford Home.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's been sitting on my Netflix Autumn's picks list, and I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah. No, I need to. I need to clear some time to do it, but I definitely want to check that out because it looks interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this chapter ends, or this part ends with a really vague chapter. I love the way that this is characterized because the entity that is walking around in Collie Entragian's body is always referred to as Collie Entragian, like up until the point where it becomes clear that it is Tack. But it is very slowly revealed through a couple of different details that this is no longer the massive cop that we're talking about. This is David's mom. This is Ellen Carver, who has already started growing, who is already, kind of undergoing this intensification, right?
She's getting swole.
Yep. She's like 6'3", built like a linebacker. Yeah. Again, like
she's drinking that muscle milk.
Oh God, I hate the name of that stuff so much. It's so gross. It sounds so gross. I don't know. But she's wearing the sheriff's hat and the belt, and she's got the gun. It's just Collie in a new body. She has jumped hosts, and the sole mission now is to kill Prey Boy.
Which is so effective, hearing that mental train of thought through Ellen's mind. I mean, it's literally his own mother is now, just so hateful, and it's effective.
His own mother is now a machine designed to kill him. Yeah.
My dude is not catching a break.
No, not at all. And there is nary a break to be. I mean, he probably has a couple. There are a lot of situations he gets out of that he should not have gotten out of, beginning with that cell, I think.
Yeah. He's got those rubber bones.
Oh yeah. I just his soft spot never closed. That's how he got out. This takes us to part 3, the American West, Legendary Shadows. This is kind of this is the bottle episode of the book, where they are all kind of trapped in a single location. Turns out Billingsley knew about this theater because, well, that's just where him and his buddies go drinking.
What kind of grown-up does that?
I don't know. I mean, I have a home that I drink in. It's pretty cool.
I just would imagine, like, as a veterinarian, he would. I mean, property values can't be that high in Desperation. I mean, I'd imagine he would, be able to own a nice single family home somewhere in the $40,000 to $60,000 range, perhaps, like with the mortgage. You could.
I think that this serves as like some kind of improvised Elks Club almost. If Elks Club people didn't just like play ping pong and do charity work, and instead just drank way too much and told old stories about the war.
But it's such a teen thing. Like, he's even doing graffiti. He draws this beautiful Rococo fish, and everybody's really impressed by it.
Yep. I love Johnny's line. Like, Billingsley gets real defensive about it. Like, oh, I must have drawn that while I was drunk. Don't give me a shit. And Johnny says, yeah, I've drawn plenty of fish myself. Except with words, because guess what? I won the American Book Prize and I fucked a model.
I just like, again, it's just such a teen thing for an older gentleman to do. Like, yeah, we break into this old abandoned movie theater, we booze it up, and we draw with magic markers.
But there's a little bit of get off my lawn to that, because they look down on the punk kids who take up the upper levels because they don't clean them up. They don't clean up after themselves.
Teens.
Teens. On their way to the theater, Steve and Cynthia meet a geologist who serves as one of our first couple of exposition dumps. This is a real problem for me with this book, actually, is we're entering a stretch of this that is just a lot of like, and here's what happened. Yeah,
there's very much a tell, don't show. Like, there's one section, I think, that was probably like 40 pages of David just saying, hey, here's what happened. Like, he just runs through. I'm like, really? Like, I mean, there are paragraph breaks, which I appreciated, but Like,
it's real. I mean, it depends on your opinion of Stephen King, but like it's either out of character or it goes against a lot of the advice that he gives when he talks to people about how to write.
agree.
Yeah. But the person they meet, they almost brain her. Her name's Audrey, a geologist who was working with the mining company, and she was hiding out in a laundromat. And she decides to go with them.
Spoiler, they should have brained her.
They really, really should have. They should have taken note, like, hey, you're awfully tall, but they don't want to judge. You don't want to judge somebody on how tall they are. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
It's the 90s.
She's just like a beautiful, elegant supermodel. And supermodels came about in the 90s.
Statuesque. It's a compliment, okay?
And Stephen King does a good job of making her plausible. I mean, because there's just something, I guess, a little bit like you get frustrated with her because she's so hysterical, I guess. Like you do get frustrated with her. Like she's kind of put in there to be, I guess, the voice of reason versus faith type of thing. Like she's just there to object to everything that they're telling. Like, no, I'm a person of science. This is not true. This is impossible. Everything's impossible.
Yes, she is definitely the voice of a kind of poison rationality in the face of what's going on. And that could either be something that is from who she was when she was a person, or that could be, Tack understanding that there are bigger powers at play and we want them to not understand or not get to the bottom of like exactly the magnitude of what's happening.
Right.
Right.
And it had been long enough since I read this that I had forgotten most of the major plot points. So I was just getting really annoyed with her. And I'm like, apparently at some point she even, with the old veterinarian, I'm like, she has a horse, so I should like her. I like people that have horses.
Yeah.
Really into horses. But I was like, I still don't like her.
Yeah. And she's fleshed out, like she's, portrayed as this person with ambitions, like, I'm here when I'm 30, by 40, I'm going to be in this national post. And by 50, I'm going to have my Nobel Prize, So like there should be more about her, but there's definitely a lot that is, doesn't quite sit right. And for good reason.
When she's talking about, I mean, if there's ever a book to put you off of the mining industry, I mean, not that something like have you ever heard of that? What is it in Montana? The Berkeley pit. It's this old mining, this runoff lake from mining. And it, from what they've done over the past 100 years, it has the same pH as lemon juice.
Right. Is that
and
above
so,
is that above Butte and it's like poisoning the town below it or something like that?
That's exactly it. Like if there's any runoff, it's going to kill the whole town or whatever. But like birds will land on it and all the birds will die. That's pretty much desperation.
Well, she's complaining about the greenies, about the protesters who are coming in. Like, oh gosh, we're killing the earth, blah blah blah. Like, oh, so we killed a couple of eagles. Well, by a couple, the vet fires in. Like, you mean like 40 or 50?
Yeah, she's like, gosh, like rolling her eyes, like, we just wanted to spray a little bit of acid all over the ground. Ooh, I'm like, you had to know it was wrong, right?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a, let's say a perspective or compassion problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? She is also the voice for I'm Stephen King, and I have done an awful lot of research into what goes into mining, so I can portray this correctly.
Exactly. Or I sat next to a miner on an airplane the other day, and I learned a lot of facts.
Yeah. But she tells the story like, okay, why is that thing over there called the China Pit? Talking about how recent activity has kind of uncovered this old shaft, which was opened up. This old, was it drift, I think, that was opened up, that was initially dug by Chinese workers back in the 1800s. And Billingsley picks it up from there with kind of the local myth and legend version of it. They hired a bunch of Chinese workers because they could basically force them to do unsafe stuff. They dug so deep that they got trapped in a cave-in and nobody was interested in saving them. And there was a massacre when 2 other Chinese workers from a nearby camp came and murdered a bunch of the folk in town as revenge. And that's kind of presented as they didn't move the bodies justification for what must be going on here.
Yeah. this is a rough section of the book. It's doesn't make Nevada look great. Like, I mean, this is just like super gross racist like historical interlude, and it's portrayed horribly in the movie. Like, it's not good. I don't know if you made it that far, but like they just put this old timey sepia like filter on it, like it was an old movie, and then they just tossed a lot of weird words up on weird inappropriate words up on the screen. I was like, ooh, this is a miss, guys.
Yeah.
Even in 2003, this is a miss.
Yeah, I didn't get to that part, but I did kind of jump around. I'm debating whether or not I want to watch the rest of it. I still have some time left on my rental, but I saw the part that was in sepia tone, and it was like, oh, this is it seems to be a bunch of stock footage. Oh, so this is like a lecture in a Metal Gear game. Yeah. So, not too crazy, but like that's a thing that happened. People definitely exploited the labor of Chinese immigrants back in the time. Like, this is just a shitty thing, and it's a plausible story, right? You could see a whole town kind of just turning a blind eye toward that kind of tragedy for bad reasons. Turns out that's not true. But like it is plausible as legend, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So they decide, hey, fun story time. We're tired of Audrey yelling at us, so why don't we go take a piss break? We'll be back in like 5, right? And so Billingsley goes off to pee, and that is where he is mauled by Anxiety Cougar. Who launches herself through the window. Good.
Yeah, she's just working on those TPS reports.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy, I hope the Henderson report goes well. Yeah. Marinville's able to shoot the cougar off, but not before too much damage is done, and Billingsley bleeds out. So Tack is onto them, and good.
But Billingsley does manage to get out one last little word to help them out, because he's been looking at her legs, Audrey's legs, the entire time, to the point where you're like, okay, my dude, walk it back a little bit. Like, we get it. She's got a short skirt. She's got good looking legs, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But like with his dying breath, he's like, legs, to let them know that she's getting taller.
Yeah, I didn't put that together, that's what he was warning them about. I thought that the sign was was when she started strangling David. But that's right. There's a line that like, oh, that's a short skirt, but it wasn't so short on her when she put it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the hint to kind of pull focus to what's going on upstairs. David has gone to pray, found a clean spot on the tile. And Audrey comes in while he's kind of in his trance and starts strangling him. Cynthia only notices this because she has taken this blow-up doll that was up there and threw it over the balcony. And
I mean, a town of like 300 or 400 people, like, why do they even let this theater be like this?
There's a pretty cool line about that. Like, oh, they definitely would have torn it down if there was anything that would go in its place.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like you just, man,
like
why do you need
why do you need a Flopville if there's like a flop house if there's like 250 people in your town?
Yeah.
Like,
everybody needs a place to drink. Yeah.
I guess maybe it's a dry county.
Possibly. Who knows? That's all. I mean, with Collie in charge, come on. So, but yeah, Steve and Cynthia managed to save David kind of at the last minute, and the gig is up. Audrey kind of sheds all of her Kenta. She has these little figurines with her, and in doing so, just starts falling apart, just disintegrating. She's been under the influence of Tack. Like, Steve goes to yank her off of David and pulls her arm off like a chicken wing. Yeah. Just the decomposition in place as a person is moving along is again, unsettling is the word of the day here, but like that's a very effective kind of imagery. Especially when we start realizing and getting more details about like what Tack does to his hosts, exacerbating existing medical problems, right?
Yes, even extremely small ones. I think they talk about how somebody had the beginnings of prostate cancer, and that's where the rot started once took place. And I guess Ellen, she had a yeast infection, and that's that gets graphic later in the book.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we want to call that a crossover with The Shining, that elevator full of blood that opens up? It's I mean, I'm being crass, but it's real gross.
Oh, it is. It's yeah, it's definitely what you picture with Ebola or something like that. It's not great.
Yeah, just people are turning into soup. It's no good.
Yeah, Ellen's not having a great day.
No, I mean, she gets a win though. She manages to trick Mary into walking over by the window so she can pull her out.
And I mean, the cougar thing went well.
Oh, I mean, the cougar play. I mean, bravo. This takes us to to part 4, the China Pit. This is God is Cruel, rounding up to the climax of the book. Johnny's taken to calling the entire group the Collie Entragian Survivor Society, but there's only like 5 of them left. So they load up in Steve's truck, and kind of David wakes up from his mini coma. Just because he performs so many like small miracles in this, what did you think of David's miracle of producing more packets of Ritz crackers and more cans of sardines for them?
I can't believe I forgot to mention the loaves and fishes. Yeah, they all sit down, and I guess the drunk veterinarian has squirreled away some Ritz crackers and sardines, and everybody's put off at first, but everybody's a little hungry, fighting evil, and when they start passing them around, and then like Johnny notices that the Ritz, they're not going down in the package. They're still Ritz. There
should be fewer cylinders of crackers than there are.
Exactly. he went full loaves and fishes with Ritz and sardines. I actually kind of loved it because I kept thinking for some reason this wasn't going to be a very religious book. Like I thought it would just be a narrative device or something, but no, this is like a little treatise on faith.
Yeah, I mean it's like shitty junk food mass produced loaves and fishes, but still the same idea.
Yeah, and then David spends the rest of the book being really preachy.
Yeah. That's one of the things that made me turn off the movie, actually, was I didn't much care for David's actor. And also just those words coming out of a kid, like judging adults reacting rationally to a situation, is kind of annoying to me.
Yeah, if I hadn't read the book and known what it was based on, I would think that it was like a movie that had been produced like by a religious film company.
Oh yeah, like this would have been on the PAX network or something like that.
Yeah, like Kirk Cameron made this movie.
Yeah.
Is kind of what it seemed like, because it's just it's very flat and it's very literal. I mean, they're pretty much just reading the actual dialogue from the book, and it just came off very like when you used to call into that phone number and they would give you the Bible story. This is like Scary Veggie Tales. The movie.
Nice. Yeah. So they load up into Steve's truck. David wakes up, and we get another kind of exposition dump. When he was unconscious, he had this vision of being back in Columbus. He's back at the Viet Cong lookout. And this man who looks kind of familiar is talking to him, saying like, "Hey, I guess if there is a hell or if there is a purgatory, a Columbus suburb seems about right," which is a much deserved dunk on Columbus and its suburbs, by the way. It is a nothing place. If you listen from there, I'm very sorry, but you live in a garbage city that is flat and sprawly.
Wow. As someone that's now been to Cincinnati twice,
What?
I think I can say that Cincinnati's actually very lovely. I loved it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm happy you enjoyed it. I like my city an awful lot, enough to pick meaningless fights with other cities in Ohio.
Oh, it's really nice. I can't imagine that Columbus is anywhere near as cool. Cincinnati has much charm.
Yeah, I will say thank you instead of the city, because the city cannot speak except with the music of its streets as the cars pass over it on our lovely skyline.
There's some kind of dope natural history museum too, right?
Oh, over on the West End, the crazy like Art Deco kind of place.
I don't know. There were a lot of fossils in the airport.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, we got one of those. It's it's the old Union Terminal that is the Cincinnati Museum Center that has a natural history side of it. The building itself, it's this cool Art Deco kind of thing. It was the model for the Justice League and the Justice League cartoons.
How about that? Man,
Yeah.
Cincinnati's really on the up and up ever since you guys closed up that mining pit that Inhuman monster came out of.
We're dealing with it. It's fine.
You guys have really recovered after all those murders.
Yeah. Can't build a streetcar, but we can destroy evil eldritch gods that rest far beneath the earth. And this has been the Cincinnati Minutes. But anyway, this guy kind of acts as the spirit guide. Turns out that David's pastor is dead because he went swimming while drunk. Oops. But here's the true nature of the mine. Both Audrey and Billingsley accounts were wrong. The Chinese miners, they opened up this whole chamber that is full of these kanta, these powerful statues that influence people's behavior, possess them and such. And they started going mad, tearing each other apart, trying to gather as many of them as they could. And they started running for the entrance. Two of them had enough presence of mind to collapse the tunnel to trap them all in. And that was, kind of the inciting incident with the China Pit. And here recently, the Desperation Mining Company unearthed the China Pit and also found this passage called the Innie, which is funny because I think of like an Innie belly button, almost like a navel kind of thing. It is this small passage beyond which a malevolent god named Tak lives. Tak cannot pass through the Innie. However, he can extend his influence through it, possess people, and try and, spread his reign that way. He possessed a mining foreman, and that kind of jumped from host to host, ultimately landing on Collie Entragian, and then Ellen Carver, and it turns out that Mary Jackson is the next.
Nice foresight on Tak's part. I mean, you got to have like somebody on deck, right?
Got to have spares. You got to keep them. You got to keep them in the corpse locker. But that's good.
And with your most effective guards, you got to put somebody in the corpse locker and have them guarded by scorpions, spiders, and snakes.
Yeah, the things people are afraid of, except when they're protected by God. And that's kind of a cool detail because like Mary wakes up in that place and kind of figures out, okay, he needs me alive, so he cannot hurt me. So therefore, none of these animals would dare sting me or poison me or anything like that. And so she's able to escape. Like that's how she gets out. In a way, that's why they all survived, because Tak was kind of keeping a pantry of suitable hosts.
Oh, I love just the term pantry really worked for me. It just, it does remind me of a big giant spider that's just keeping something to eat.
Yeah. They even call that out, like in like some of the imagery with the other spiders, like, oh, that's they're saving it for later, like it's still alive. Yeah,
just a little Mary flavor saver,
Yeah, it's like Flanders calls his mustache the soup saver. Yeah. Oh man. So. David at this point understands, like, hey, my mom is done for. We need to find and save Mary, because we just kind of left that theater, A, under duress, but also B, without really accounting for where she's at. We get this terrifying sequence of Mary running from Ellen Carver, and Ellen Carver's body just straight up falling apart. And I know this is a frequent reference, but it is very appropriate here. Falling apart like Vincent D'Onofrio's character in Men in Black. Like,
it is. I mean, there's torrents of blood coming from her, from every orifice, and she's just like pushing it for that. She's like, if I can just make it another 20 yards before this body literally explodes. They even talk about some of the noises the body was making on the inside as organs started to fail. And she's like, if I could just make it this last 20 feet and grab Mary.
As things started dropping like in her body cavities from, from the ties dissolving. I mean, and Ellen is the character who had the yeast infection. They describe her stuffing a T-shirt down the front of her pants to, stop that from becoming an inconvenience as she started to fall apart down there. It's incredibly viscerally unpleasant. Let's say
this is probably not a book you're going to want to read to your kids at night.
No, like maybe don't play the audiobook in the car on the way to your kids' school.
Yeah, on the way to school.
Yeah. Just rolling up, like cranking the bass for the drop off. So the audiobook is read by Stephen King, and that's always fun.
That's the one form of media I didn't consume for this. Maybe I should listen to the audiobook now.
That's the same as the book.
Yeah, they're remarkably similar, is what you're saying?
I would say so. Yeah, it's so for the purposes, I always remark on the audiobooks because that's definitely a way that a lot of people who listen to the show are consuming the books. But for the purposes of this, it's always really interesting to hear the canonical pronunciations of these different words, cantoi, cantac, all of that. Even the language of the unformed, like that has to come out of Stephen King because otherwise we just have guesses and we would be arguing over what the actual pronunciation is.
I was I'm actually really grateful for that. I've been very careful because I read it in my head as cantois, which I guess it's the French old god, but so cantoi was very helpful.
Yeah, instead of tack, it's Jacques. Yeah, no, I definitely read it as cantois as well. Back when I first read the books.
Just Cuthbert. It's got that little cantois and
Yep. Cuthbert. Oh man. It's around. Okay. Well, we should definitely resolve this encounter first because Ellen doesn't manage to catch up with Mary. She's not able to catch her final host. And instead she has to leap into the body of a golden eagle. I love this little nugget. It cannot jump into the lesser beings because like if it tried to go into say a coyote or a spider, the animal would just explode. Just because, all of these hosts, they have this kind of just rapid, it's a little bit like, the Extremis virus or whatever it is from Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
And I mean, at least if Tack is going to jump into something, I mean, Eagle is pretty badass. It could have been like one of those buzzards from earlier or,
True.
Yeah. There was a line that I probably should have verified before I came on the show at the beginning. Entragian says that vultures can pass gas.
Yes. It says vultures are the only birds that fart.
Is that true?
We can find out if you vamp.
I don't know why it's important to me to know.
I cut out a bunch of Googling there. We have determined that that has to be an untrue thing. I just looked it up. I searched the word buzzards are the only birds that fart. And in the top 5 results is a Goodreads quote from Desperation. So I think that our old buddy Stevie, he sold us a line on that.
Oh. Tragic.
But in things that are true, at least within the story, just like Tack takes the memories of whatever host he's in, Tack also has limitations. So like when he jumps into the eagle, he starts losing his ability to think in human language, right? And he reverts solely to the to the language of the unformed. So yeah.
But he looks badass. So there is still that.
but he what?
But he looks badass. So
this is true.
I mean, again, as birds go, eagles very glamorous.
No, especially golden eagles. Because they're handsome birds.
Yeah.
So it's around this time that we reach the point of the hero's journey where the hero rejects the quest. Marinville, has decided, hey, we're out of the theater. Tack is distracted. Like, why would it be up to us to deal with this? We can go, we can talk to the authorities, we can get somebody else to help us do this. Nobody else wants that. David says, like, the mission from God is to go and seal this up ourselves. But also, like, there's free will. None of us can stop you from doing this. None of us can force you into this dangerous thing. So they let him go away. However, he drops his wallet. David picks it up, rifles through the photos, and says, oh, this picture of Johnny from the Vietnam War, turns out that's the person that I saw in my vision. That's the person who correctly assessed Columbus as a nowhere place.
Which is just wild. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I get where it's supposed to be clever because this was all set up so early. The Viet Cong lookout, things like that. It just is weird that a God who speaks directly would also be like, I'm going to get a younger version of this Marinville dude who, I don't know if you know, won the National Book Award and had sex with a wonderful actress. But like, it's just I liked this, but I don't know. Like, it just seemed a little bit pat somehow.
The end result of an actualized Johnny who decides to take responsibility for himself and try and make a positive impact on the world is a good and worthwhile thing. The idea that you saw young Johnny in the land of the dead because that's when Johnny stopped growing. And that's, that was when his kind of like just slow suicide of the soul started happening. Like, it seems very strange and very muddy to mix in literal death, such as, oh, your pastor went swimming drunk and died, with a very figurative kind of demise, such as Johnny kind of losing his way.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah. So I'm not like a huge fan of this kind of twist or turn. I also don't... This shouldn't be very persuasive evidence for Johnny. Like, oh, it turns out you were the person that I saw. Isn't that neat? Like, if I was in his position, I'd say, oh, you're just saying that to get me to come back and help you, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh, that's extremely convenient, isn't it? Wow. How about that?
Yeah. Turns out you have somebody omniscient whispering in your ear. You totally could understand that. Like, I used to hang out at a place called the Viet Cong Lookout. Like,
yeah. And by the way, God also said that if you want to start putting some money in a college savings fund for me because my parents have passed away, he just thought that'd be a really good idea.
Yeah, I'm like 11 years old and you have all of the money. So
yeah.
just thinking maybe you can help us out. So this, however, within the bounds of the narrative is enough to bring Johnny back, to get him on board, and to also say, like, yes, this is the Johnny Marinville I can be. I wasn't a hero in Vietnam. I just kind of built a career off the back of what I saw. However, here I am able to, make something of myself above and beyond sleeping with that actress and also winning the National Book Award. So they reunite at the mine off the side of the China Pit. There's no dynamite. However, there is a bunch of accelerant. There's a bunch of ANFO. And the plan is to blow up this pit and seal it up. However, when they try and approach, guess who's flying along? We got Tack in the body of the Golden Eagle saying, oh, you know what? I forgot. I totally just kind of spaced. David, your dad is still alive. He hasn't done an awful lot in this story, but we're just going to just give him some talon. All right, eat out his throat, and boom, he's dead. Why not?
just one last, hey, killed your dad.
Pray boy.
And David is like, really? Are you shitting me?
I mean, like, at this point, it's just petty.
Yeah. Like, God, I get it. I'm trying to be a good dude here. But you just took my sister, my mom, and my dad?
Yeah.
Why'd you have to take my dad?
Yeah. Well, God didn't listen when Job complained either. I mean, they cite that in this. I'm not just
I do like how involved God is, though. Like, I mean, a little bit earlier, when right before David convinced him to come back, like God helped him make that great shot with a hammer to kill a wolf. There was a wolf that was attacking Johnny, and
Yeah.
he hurls this hammer, and he feels like he's thrown it wrong, but then
Mhm.
it nails the wolf right between the eyes. I mean, it's a really helpful God. I think he's just gonna take David's dad like this.
Yeah, he's a real helpful, but he's a real expensive God. Like, if I could get, if I could get just like the discount line, can I get the great value version of God? Where I don't have to give up everybody who matters to me. Thank you.
Like, it's like one miracle, one body. Like,
Kinda.
I'll let you out when you grease up with the soap, but then I'm gonna take your mom away and she's gonna die. And then loaves and fishes. Oh, sorry, had to kill the veterinarian. Like,
yeah. Oh man. It's depressing. However, the eagle does die, and that means that Tack is now as trapped as he's ever been, at least since this recent outbreak began. He's back down in the innie, meaning, hey, we can actually we have a chance now, right? And throughout this kind of back half of the book, David has been saying God is cruel, right? Like, all of this terrible cost that I've incurred, that all of us have incurred, are just because God either doesn't care about or doesn't understand exactly what we are going through, can't see into our mind, right? Marinville, upon this, kind of realizes that David's not hearing God anymore, but he is. Johnny is. And he knows that David is meant for something else, that this act itself will incur a cost, and it can't be David. Marinville has to sacrifice himself. And so David makes him strip to ensure that he is not under the influence of any kanta, right? So first off, good vigilance there. You finally learn. And when Johnny says, like, hey, you're not going to be the one who martyrs himself for this, he has this amazing line that I really like. Johnny says, you said God is cruel the way that a person who's lived his whole life on Tahiti might say snow is cold. You knew, but you didn't understand. Do you know how cruel your God can be, David? How fantastically cruel? Sometimes he makes us live. Which means that, there's going to be more. Like, it's going to cost me my life to end this, but also, like, your suffering is going to continue. Like, isn't that the shit of it? This is the way that it has to go. This is the way that it has to go down, but it's my time and not yours.
Because he really had to trick David to do what he does. I mean, he really deceived David.
Yeah. Well, he enlisted Steve to hold him back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he wouldn't go charging into the pit himself. So
which prior to this, he probably just did that when he wanted to look tough. Like, hey, I'm going to pretend to fight this guy. Hold me back.
Oh man, I'm going to kill him. Oh, don't let me kill him.
If my friend here wasn't holding me back, I would whip your ass right now.
It's a real schoolyard kind of thing.
Yeah, with my National Book Award, which I did win.
Yep. I'm gonna brain you with my Newbery, which is a different thing. It's a kid's book thing. It's a sticker. The others drive away as Johnny doesn't just descend into the pit with the accelerant, but just kind of jumps into it.
Yeah.
The description of him just like Homer Simpson down the Springfield Gorge, having his skin torn from his bones by the crystal outcroppings of this funnel, is harrowing, is what it is. Yeah. He's only saved because he has a helmet on. Yeah. We also have Tack literally reaching out from the innie with his kind of smoky, murky tentacles to try and invade Marinville, make him a new host.
He was safe because he had a face guard.
Yeah, he had his helmet on. He hated that thing because it was real bulky, but guess what? Loud pipes save lives.
Bumped up right against it.
Yep. But just he covered up his snoot and his smoocher, and he's good to go. I do love the idea that like Tack gets you by you literally breathing him in. It describes the transfer process earlier as like, first Collie and then Ellen, like locking lips over a person's mouth and nose and breathing into them, like exhaling the essence of Tack.
And Tack tries to reason with him, to make some promises to him. I don't know. I liked the descriptions of how I think the line was that the Cantas were calling to him, pulling him as the moon pulls its salt water. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it's definitely some temptation down there.
Yeah, and he says like, "Hey, I can make you not hurt anymore. I can make you the most powerful person on earth." When that doesn't work, when Johnny either is not tempted or doesn't believe it, he can say, "Well, I can refrain from hurting the people you care about." That doesn't work. It's very similar to the end of it, actually, when Pennywise, or the force that embodies, or the force that Pennywise embodies, when it realizes that it's finally in danger, starts begging for its life. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here comes that shotgun shell. Yeah. Because God said, "Hey, we need to carry the shotgun shell from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. There's no dynamite, there's no blasting cap. However, we can use the hammer, hit the end of the shell to ignite the accelerant, to ignite the info, and collapse the China shaft, the China pit rather, and seal the Any and Tack away."
I think that Stephen King did put his dream last words into Johnny's mouth, because when Johnny goes to strike that shotgun shell, he just screams, "God forgive me, I hate critics."
Oh, that's because Taxter's like ripping into him, saying, "Oh, you never did anything with your life," or something like that, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it's just, that must have been really satisfying for Stephen King to be right, because Tech is like trashing his writing and everything, and like saying that he's vain, like I hate critics. Yep. Bam.
Well, now you done fucked up. Do you want to be sealed away forever? Because that's how you get sealed away forever.
Yeah. Oh, you want to dance, buddy?
And so that is the end of Johnny. Oh, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, and I liked the language too about the brilliant soundless red, like swooning into a rose. Like, King must have enjoyed writing that with the rose light.
Oh yeah. And saying like, "Oh, there was there was a sound, there was a light, there was redness, there was the bloom, and then it stopped. There was nothing."
Actually, this must have been a fun book for him to write in general. He got to kill everybody. A writer got redeemed.
Yep. No, like you can kind of tell in a lot of ways that he had fun with it. I mean, Collie is one of those really fun villains to write, just because you can just be like, "Oh, what would be the most fucked up thing to do in this situation?" Well, he does it. He's like the Joker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So reaching part 5, which is really just an epilogue, Highway 50 excused early. The others have gotten to Mary's car and are starting it up, and it's just finally sinking in for Mary that like, hey, her husband is dead. She desperately misses him. She can like smell him in the car. It's just just a stone bummer is what it is.
Well, what do you think the conversation's going to be like when she gets back in town and has to call Peter's sister with the bag of drugs?
Say, "Hey, here's your car. I don't even have like, yeah. So funny, do you story.
Have a minute?
So you remember how you had a brother?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Did had a brother? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you're gonna think I'm crazy. So
yeah.
Oh man, so pissy, man. I would be so angry.
I had a question for you. Now that they're about to leave, they're about to roll out of town. What do you think? I mean, obviously, just being an agent of chaos, but what do you think Tack's end game was? I mean, Tack killed everybody in that town. I mean, would the goal to be to get out of the town, like to possess a couple people and just get out, like, or is it just to just sit in one spot and be real evil?
I don't know. So I think that part of Tack's whole thing is that he is beyond our understanding of what of what a goal would be, but so that's the usual play with like a Lovecraft eldritch monstrosity kind of thing, right? However, the rules for him are incredibly clear, that he has to have a host to jump to, or else he gets transmitted back and he's trapped away forever, hoping that somebody else stumbles upon him, right? The smarter play, if he was not entirely kind of dominated by this desire to embody evil in every single way, evil as defined by like, oh, I just don't care about human life, if he wasn't compelled to do that, the smarter way would just to be more subtle about it, to find a way to get the populace to work for you, just like the animals worked for you, and spread your influence that way, right? As opposed to just literally salting the earth of any possible host for you to jump to.
Yeah, I just don't understand why you'd be like, okay, I have to have a host to get out and do my business, so I'm going to kill my 299 of my available like 304 hosts.
Right.
Like,
yeah. So the other Lovecraftian, horror author style thing would be like, oh, he's an idiot god. Like, he's incredibly powerful, but he is, like the scorpion, unable to stop himself from stinging the frog, even though the frog is the only thing keeping him afloat in the river, right?
Oh gosh, this is the kind of garbage god that I would be. Like, I just would be terrible at it like that, Like, I'd be like, I have this great plan, and then I'd be like, oh no, bested by a hero again. Come on.
Jesus. Trapped again. I cannot die, but I am just sealed into the void with all these other dipshit gods out here in Toadash space. Come on.
Exactly. I would have gotten away with it if it weren't for you pesky kids aided by God himself.
Yeah. God who may or may not be Gan in this situation, on the side of the white. Yeah. I don't know. If we put him in the league with the other kind of Toadash monsters, like even the greater ones, like Pennywise, like Rosematter, or like some other people who I don't want to talk about because they're cool little twists and what have you. None of them are especially I think Pennywise is the most competent one, but like none of them are especially good at anything beyond the most base self-preservation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that ultimately it wasn't supposed to add up to much.
Yeah. I do love how at the end David is in charge of everything. Like, David's like, this is the story we're going to tell to the police. Mary's like, okay, I think the important thing is that we all tell the same story, just like David said. Like,
let's trust this 11-year-old.
Exactly.
Most of his story involves us giving him all of our Yu-Gi-Oh cards for some reason. But who am I to go against God?
Yeah.
Off in the distance, they can see the dust from the collapsed mine turning into kind of the shape of a coyote's head, roaring at them.
Which kind of freaks them out because they think maybe we didn't get him, but then I guess the dust plume starts to rot and fall apart.
Yeah. It's the final dying yowl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to kind of show that the covenant is complete, that the pact is sealed, David, when he is searching through his pocket, he finds the initial hall pass that he, stuck on the nail in the Viet Cong lookout back in Columbus, Ohio, that nothing space from which nothing will escape. And looks at it and says like, oh, Johnny shouldn't have had anything. Like, I basically strip searched him. However, this is on my person in place of the shotgun shell. With a note referencing an inside joke that David had with his friend Ben, and also citing a Bible verse, 1 John, 1 John 4:8. I pulled the Trump there. Corinthians 2. 1 John 4:8. Remember, God is love. Kind of calling the whole thesis of the book into question. Like, God is cruel or whatever. They ask David, like, is that true? Do you think that is? And you're like, hey, I don't know. And it ends with him praying in the backseat as they drive away.
It is kind of a nice freebie. I mean, this certainly isn't a happy ending per se. I mean, it is, I guess, a happy ending, but it did work out well that Mary, like her husband's dead, and they don't have any kids, and David's whole family is dead, and they both ended up alive. Like that's nice for David that he's got somewhere to crash with, like the one person who would get it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, the one person who is also suffering a very specific kind of PTSD.
Yeah, like it'd be very tough to explain that to anybody. Like, of course, they don't understand about your parents, but you couldn't tell them anything about, like,
no.
Okay, wink, wink. God talks to you. Your psychoanalyst would be saying,
Sure.
like as he wrote you a prescription.
And this God that you hear, yeah. So that's Desperation. I'd call it a pretty solid B-.
I think that's fair. Like I said at the beginning, I really, really enjoyed the book. I don't know that I would recommend the book to anyone necessarily.
You really have to unfocus your eyes for it.
Yeah. And I think as a treatise on faith, that it rings kind of hollow. I mean, I don't know. There's some wonderful books out there, like The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell, which is one of my favorite books, an examination of faith. But this one is just kind of like, oh, cool. God's cruel. He kind of helps some people and then asks for some sacrifices.
Right.
And,
yeah.
like, I mean, it just didn't feel very, it didn't feel like Stephen King believed it or like there was any point to it. Like it was just God as a narrative device.
Yeah. God is cruel, but is also very useful in incredibly specific situations.
Right.
Yeah. As opposed to being any kind of like deeper meditation. And it's frustrating, right? Because he's done a better job at that in the past, for sure. I mean, like even with The Stand, that is, Lord of the Rings set in America, except instead of the host of angels and wizards and stuff like that, it is like this kind of Judeo-Christian battle between good and evil, but something more, Lovecraftian on the evil side, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is a much longer book that has time to kind of focus on some of those meditations and set up the greater conflict. This is, scene to scene to scene to scene, moment to moment to moment to moment. It barely has time to catch its breath. And when it does it all at once with these exposition dumps that kind of like set up immediately, like, oh, here's what the stakes are. Here's the transaction that took place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really is like, would it have been more successful if they just kind of made it some kind of weird, what's that?
If they had made it a voice and not the Judeo-Christian God. I think that's where it suffered. If David just heard a voice, like even if it was, kind of like in The Shining where Danny hears the voice of himself from the future or something like that. Like, I think that would almost be a little bit more. Anybody who's familiar with the Judeo-Christian God brings their own set of preconceived notions and things about it. So it's hard to live up what making it that God means,
Right. Yeah. It's just like you're using a really commonplace thing in a way that has a ton of baggage and is going to come up short or, even worse than that, come up like way too convenient as a narrative device.
It is a really good ad for Jolt Cola, though.
Oh, absolutely! Like, so just if you want to have sex with a model, or sorry, with a famous actress, and also win an American book award, then please drink Jolt. Also, it will keep you off the sauce.
I mean, they were just slamming Jolts at the end of the book. Like every 5 minutes, somebody like, time to drink another Jolt.
And I say this as somebody who at that time was a Surge man. I don't see the appeal. I mean, it's
I love the term surge man. It's like a Don Draper, like old fashioned. I'm a surge man.
Oh man, good villain though. Collie Entragian is great. That first third where he's still a factor.
Oh yeah,
amazing.
He's hilarious.
He's
terrifying, but I mean, he makes some good jokes.
So if there's anything to take away from it is that Collie Entragian is a boss.
Yeah. And that hopefully Cynthia from Rose Matter and Desperation lives a long, full, happy life after this.
She touched the canta though. And so did Steve. Like, they talk about all those people who touch it in the mines going crazy. Like, it caught up with them eventually. Like, I'm terribly worried for the both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I am actually very curious. I need to like look up a wiki or something and see if she appears somewhere else, because like she's a good character. Like, she's very likable.
She's scrappy, and yeah, absolutely.
Been through a lot. Yeah. So thank you, Autumn, for going through this and reading the book again and talking about it.
Absolutely. A pleasure as always. This was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to talking about some books later down the road.
Oh, yeah. So where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Mrs. Greer. That's MISSUS Greer. Yeah.
Cool. You can also find me on Twitter at Cole Ross, KOLEROSS. And I stream horror games on the weekends at twitch.tv/Duckfeed.tv. Otherwise, for this show, we are coming up on a new season where we're talking about both the Wind Through the Keyhole and the Dark Tower comics. If you're going to buy any of those in whatever format, consider going to duckfeed.tv/tipjar. You pay the same amount of money that you otherwise would, and the network gets a small cut of the proceeds of whatever you buy. It's a way to help out the network without spending any extra money other than you otherwise would. But otherwise, tune in next time. We're going to start talking about not the first two of the Dark Tower comics, but The Long Road Home and Treachery, I believe, are the first two that we're going to talk about. Then we're going to settle into The Wind Through the Keyhole, which I'm very excited about.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that's just about everything. We'll see you next time. And until then, long days and pleasant nights.